across, this person cannot use this a rebuttal to disprove that this passage is about salvation, that they might all be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. But we are bound to give thanks always to God for you, brethren, beloved of the Lord, because God has from the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth.
So, all right, let's just say it is talking about positional salvation, right? Let's assume that, right? Then what this says is that they have been called unto salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth by our gospel. So they were called unto salvation by the gospel. Okay? And then I'm saying, so I don't understand why that disproves my argument, because the gospel is this thing that calls you to believe in Jesus Christ for everlasting life. That's my argument, right? So how does this disprove my argument? I don't get it yet.
Whereunto he called you by our gospel. So before defining this gospel, again, the our gospel, I'm going to show that it's saying you must believe this gospel to be saved, and if you don't, you're damned. So the terms here are the gospel, our gospel, and belief of the truth. They mean the same thing. Why? Because contextually, they're being used in the exact same context.
No. It doesn't mean that same thing. He's saying contextually they're using the same context. What? Contextually they're using the exact same context. What? What is that supposed to mean? What does that mean? What does that even mean? Contextually they're using the exact same context. It's just like using words to make people think you know what you're talking about. That's what that is. When you say stuff like that, that is a meaningless sentence. Contextually, they're using the same context. What does that mean? What does that mean? Anyway. Okay. He's trying to say belief of the truth is the same as our gospel. But they're called by the gospel, by our gospel, to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. Why are those the same thing? The gospel has called them to salvation, which is through these things. It doesn't imply that the gospel is one of those things through which we're chosen to salvation. So he's just imposing that interpretation onto that. That's not what it says. It says we're called by our gospel to salvation. The salvation is through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. So the gospel is what called us to those things. It doesn't say that the gospel is belief of the truth.
Same thing. Why? Because contextually, our gospel and belief of the truth, they mean the same thing. Why? Because contextually, they're being used in the exact same context. And it says, those that receive the truth are saved. Those that don't receive the truth, that don't believe it, are damned.
Okay, so those that receive the truth are saved, and those who believe not the truth are damned, right? Okay, so they believe not the truth. Those who believe the truth, those who receive the love of the truth, are saved, and those who believe not the truth are damned. And they're chosen to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. So that's why they are part of this group that believe the truth. They're not part of this group because they're not, these people did not believe not the truth. But they're called to this belief of the truth by the gospel. They're called to that. Belief of the truth is not the same thing as the gospel. It's not. Clearly not. Clearly. I mean, it's quite clear from the grammar here. I don't know if you guys disagree with me or anything, but this is undeniable. The gospel is the thing calling them to salvation. The salvation is through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. The gospel is what called them to that. So the gospel is not the belief of the truth. It's not.
And it says, those that receive the truth are saved. Those that don't.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. Those who receive the love of the truth are saved, and those who believe not the truth are damned.
To receive the truth, that don't believe it, are damned. But in contrast, the believers, the saints, they were chosen to salvation by the gospel. They called to salvation.
No. They're called by our gospel, chosen you to salvation. God has from the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief in the truth, whereunto He called you by our gospel. So they were called to this salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth by the gospel.
The believers, the saints, they were chosen to salvation by the gospel. They called to salvation by the gospel. So if the believers are called to salvation by the gospel, and those that don't believe it are damned.
No, it doesn't say those that don't believe the gospel are damned. It says those that believe not the truth. And similarly, these people that are chosen to salvation are chosen to salvation, which is through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. So the salvation involves this sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. But that doesn't imply that the gospel is the same thing as that. He's just completely just making that up. He's just adding
by the gospel. They called to salvation by the gospel. So if the believers are called to salvation by the gospel, and those that don't believe it are damned, then clearly this gospel is the condition to obtain salvation. If you don't believe it, you're damned. If you believe,
that's not what that says at all. He's just like, this is what people do, you know? They just bring up tons of scriptures and their charts and their lines and their graphics and stuff, and act like they got it all figured out. But when you actually listen to what he's saying, he's kind of ignoring the grammar of these sentences and just putting his interpretation in. He's just telling you this stuff. Like, listen to what he says.
Salvation by the gospel, and those that don't.
So we're called to salvation by the gospel.
Don't believe it are damned.
Those who do not believe it are damned. But he says those who do not believe it. What? The gospel. He's saying it's the gospel, but it doesn't say that. It says believe not the truth. And these people are called to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. They're called to salvation by the gospel. And the salvation is through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. But it doesn't imply that the gospel is this truth that they're supposed to believe or anything. It's not what that says. There's no reason why we should impose that onto the text, you know?
And clearly this gospel is the condition to obtain salvation. If you don't believe it, you're damned. If you believe it, you're saved. Now, what is the gospel here?
See, always like clearly. Oh, clearly, that's what it is. No, it's not clearly. But when they say these words, like clearly, oh, clearly, that's what it means. Like, it sounds like they know what they're talking about, right? But if you actually look at the grammar of this sentence, that's not what it says.
Okay. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Studying the Bible with Mike and Pat. These other YouTubers are just so trash. Hit the thumbs up if you want to support. Go follow Mike as he follows the Lord. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 You better watch out, Mike's calling out the shields. If you're not free grace, you need to sit down and chill. We're not hyper grace, you know we keep it real. Eternally secure, you know that we're sealed. We don't back low, we're not workspace heretics. Mike's not in it for the money, trying to get a lick. They out here selling their souls for a couple clicks. Becoming Freemasons so they can't just get rich. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Shout out to Mike and Pat. Check out his channel, Toronto Bible Study. Subscribe and like.